Okay. Alright, I think we're square. Let's jump back to wide and tell you what's going on tonight. So tonight, I'm going to be making, hopefully not making a mess. I have pretty much finished the piece, thanks to all the support that you guys have been giving while we've been getting through the last of it. We got all the stitching done, and I pretty much dry. It could probably sit for a few more days and evaporate a bit more. I think if the spots where you see where we use the clay syringe in, like back in here, and actually let's flip over that detail camera, you can see it a little better. Alright. So yeah, where we dropped in all that extra material, that still looks really dark, doesn't it? Let's bump that up a little. Alright, looks a little better. So yeah, where we jumped it, where we squirted in the slip, I think you can see it over here too, where we did the little test on the cheek. It's a little soft. But I think for molding, it will hold up okay. If we get the plaster down and we're careful with it, it should work out just fine. So, actually I'm missing one. Well, let's go ahead and kind of get started a bit. So the first thing that we're going to need to actually do is create a mold wall around what we want to mold. So what I'll do is I need to actually build edges to this around here, up the side in here, to kind of box it all in, right? And this will keep all the plaster in place when we're actually doing the plastering. I have some chloroplast, which is that's the fancy name for corrugated plastic. It's pretty much the same as cardboard, where it's 2 layers like this with a zigzag of plastic in between, and that makes it lighter but thicker at the same time. So that will be the first to cut those pieces, and I just got it because it's cheap. You can use like foam core, you can actually use clay as well. You can build out walls out of clay too. You know, you just really just need something there to keep it, and you don't want to use something that's whatever you mold with is going to actually like stick to. So wood, you can actually use wood, and wood's a really good option if you seal it using like a wax or some sort, because otherwise, you know, wood's a little porous and you pour your mold material in and then it binds up and sticks, and then it's a mess and terrible. So let's see, first things first, let's make some room so I can actually move this off to the side. So there, I'll be using this cutting surface for it. This is just gonna go over here for a little bit. Hopefully nothing happens. It's another thing. Clean up my desk, put away my clay, put away my clay tools. So we don't need it for this part. So a little more robust, actual fabrication kind of stuff tonight, not sculpting like we've been doing. So measurement wise, I think we're going to need the mold walls. I think I measured them at roughly about almost 40, roughly about 37 centimeters. We'll make them 40, I think, if there's enough room. So let's see. That is, you know, actually we don't need to cut this down much. I think it'll actually fit just fine. We'll just cut it out, cut out 4 pieces that we can box it up with, and I can just trim the extra. Let's see. Hey Mario, thanks for jumping in, man. So yeah, I think if you can see, the corrugated plastic is, let's see, if you can kind of see how it's got sort of all those little holes in it, right? So it's just plastic and it's lightweight. So we're gonna need 4 pieces to box it all in. Put this down. And I think we only really need it to be about, let's see. So we really only, there's no way I said it was only 3 centimeters. Yeah, I guess so. I guess we only need about 3 centimeters high. Well, we should probably make it at least like 10. Right? How wide is this? Maybe we just cut it in even pieces. So it's level 41. A pen. Let's see. The nice thing about it being corrugated like it is, it actually makes straight lines for you. So if we were to roughly split it into 4 pieces, it would come out to roughly about 10 centimeters each. So we'll just, it's about this one, this, about that, and about that. It's not perfect, but you know, we'll get it done. Alright. So, actually I need to move that. I don't think we need the detail cam right up in here for right now. This can be a secondary view cam. Let's see how that looks. There you go. If you really want some perspective. So first things first. Let's see. This will be about, trying to line it up with the spine. It's really close enough, I think. Yeah, it should be fine. So there's one piece. Yeah, man, the cleaned up the all the clay off the desk and prepped for this part, which we're gonna have to be very, very careful not to make a terrible, terrible mess with. The unfortunately, I don't have a sort of a nice shop to work with, you know, out in a garage or something like that. This just means I have to be more deliberate in how I'm putting things together. All right, last cut, and then it's the glue in. Let's see. that. That. Oh. Got a little bit of a weird cut there, but that's alright. We'll just use that as the top facing part. It did not cut clean. It's always the last one, right? Alright, we'll just do a reverse cut on it. If you ever run into that where you have the fold but not the cut, you can just cut it from behind. It's not as elegant, but you know, gets it done. Alright. There we go. Okay. 4 easy pieces. Shouldn't need the cutting stuff anymore. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a very simple mold box. So first things first, I kind of want to find what the clean flat edges are. So I'm just putting it on the ground to make sure it's kind of a flat edge. It's not necessary, but the cleaner you can have the bottom piece, the more secure the mold box will be. Great. So just pretty straightforward. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a mold box like this. Now, I kind of overdid it for the length. I don't really need 4 pieces that are, 40 something long, but if you put it together in this kind of configuration, let's see if I can do this with just 2 hands. Oops. There. Yep. Okay, it's not working out well. There we go. So if we do it like this, right, where each piece kind of overlaps a little bit, I can scale the mold box, no problem, and then secure it that way. Then we can trim off the extra pieces if we need to, or we can leave it. But it's just kind of a simple way to make scalable mold boxes. There's a way you can make actually reusable mold blocks. Oh my gosh, I have reusable mold blocks. Why am I just thinking about this right now? Huh. Like, it just dawned on me that I literally made wood blocks for molding specifically, and it would have saved myself all this hassle. Oh well, whatever. We're committed with this, so we're just gonna go with it. So let's get them all upright, and then we'll get the, we'll go ahead and get the, get this out. Oops. Alright. There we go. Alright, hopefully we can see that okay. So yeah, let's see if I have one of these. Pretty much covers what I need. So I can work along this edge here. I made a little too much on this side, so that's not going to be as clean. So this one's going to go kind of over the side here, and we're going to seal it up so that nothing leaks out. And then we'll do, another one here, and then one over there. And hopefully that should cover us pretty well. The way I think I'm going to do this, I was going to initially use a hot glue gun to cover the outside of it, but I think what's going to be easiest is actually using just sellotape, you know, just good old packing tape. Let me get that. So yeah, this will be some more simplified, I think. So literally just enough tape. Hold on, this is a little tricky to do with a very limited workspace. So when you're doing mold making, you have to be very careful, because if you have a casting material that fits into very small tight spaces to get really good detail replication, it also means that it will leak like crazy through any little holes that you have in your mold walls. So when you're, you know, casting the final product, it's really important that everything's sealed up in a way, or that you're anticipating overflow or runnage from it. When you're making your mold in the first place, like this, if I had a gap, then yeah, that would be really problematic. If all of a sudden, you know, half of what you poured for the plaster ends up on the floor, right? So this is just a very careful step to help seal up that difference. And then I'll reinforce this again as well. And one of the ways you can do that actually is using hot glue. Just, you know, you just pop some glue on the back of, and use it like almost like, you know, caulking, right? Because the stuff like seals up pretty quick. So this piece going about what here? Yeah, about that. Let me get some more tape. Looks like it's just you and me, Red. This is the less interesting than being all focused in on sculpting technique. It's more visually boring, but what can I say? Very necessary. It'll be a very cool result. I was actually kind of debating between what type of, you know, what type of sculpting stuff I should be doing, or what type of crafting, because, you know, as a final result, big costumes, big pieces, helmets, those sorts of things are more visually interesting as a finished piece, right? Something you go take to a convention and you can wear around. But as a working piece, it's very boring to watch, I think, because the actual work that goes into you know, goes into that kind of stuff tends to be working with very ambiguous, large, messy pieces that you're cutting and fitting together, and you know, you don't really see a final result until you get into detail work. Yeah, so I mean, you're right. It's it's kind of like, do you want to see the flashy end result, or do you want to see something that's more of a compelling live experience? So I almost feel like that, you know, sculpting is probably the way to go for stuff like this, because it's more interesting in the moment. You can see a little more what's going on. All right, this is going to be a tricky piece of tape to put down. Let's see about that. Let's try. This we're gonna have to. This side here, I'm probably gonna run a little bit of hot glue around the side of, just to help keep it sealed up. Because, you know, when you're plopping down, you figure it's not just the fact if there's a hole in it, but if you're using like a heavy casting material, you're also putting down about, you know, a couple pounds worth of pressure into the towards the bottom of your mold. So it can, just that in itself, the weight of the material can kind of force its way through more than you would expect. All right. This side is the one I'm going to be most worried about, I think. Let's get this mold wall. This is actually going faster than I expected, I think. Go. So I do this to kind of guess the spacing. I've done that plenty of times before where I'll lay the piece flat like this and expect to flip it up, forgetting that there's even as small as it may be, a little thickness to it, right? And then it crushes. So by doing it this way, I need 4 hands. Oh, hold on, cat's making away with something. What did you take? I don't even know what that is. What is this? What is this? Did she come out of the ring with it? Can you stay out of my shop? I don't even know what this is. Great. Sorry about that. Apparently my cat's playing fetch with things out of my workshop. I don't know what this is or where it came from. I just know that it came out of the other room and is probably important. What is it? Oh well, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out when I go try to use something and it doesn't work. Oh man, cable management is such a pain in the butt, man. What are you using to clean it all up with? Because I just did this recently with our computers and our cables. Yeah, the cat literally walked in carrying it like a dog, playing fetch. Except, well, I shouldn't say she was playing fetch. She was flat out stealing it. It was theft. Alright. So got that one. Let's just add a little support piece for it here. Velcro ties, that's actually really smart. Where are you going? Nobody can see you. Come here. I'll be this if I'm done. Yeah, I found for doing some cabling that I just did for ours, it's, what is it? You know, it's like, it looks like a spiral cut plastic tube, you know, so it's like a cable wrap that it doesn't secure other than the fact that you kind of keep wrapping it around and around and around and around. We used some of that stuff and it actually worked super, super well. It kind of helped clean up long stretches of cable and made it all look super nice. And if you had a really long run, you could actually, you know, just increase the length of the wrap for it. Trying to see if I had any handy that I could point the camera at for you, but the cool thing I really liked about it was if you're wrapping a vertical column of cables and you need to split one off a little sooner than that, you seem to be able to like split it out of the spiral. a little sooner, so you can branch it like a tree, if that makes any sense. But yeah, highly recommend wood wrap again. All right, trying to get this. The other thing I'm trying to be careful of is to not make a funky like trapezoid shape to the walls. Otherwise, when I put it together, it's gonna get all weird. All right, last wall, and then all I really need to do is reinforce to make sure. So you see that the way I put it together, it doesn't really matter how long the pieces are that are cut, because they're all sliding off of each other, right? So it's not, you know, stuck. Oh, I should probably start heating up my glue gun. Let me plug that in. Hold on. Sorry, I mean my thermal adhesive device. And don't worry, this is actually about to get, I think, pretty exciting. Once I start mixing and making a mess, you'll definitely want to be around for that. All right. Glue gun's heating up. So while that's warming up, finish up this last wall. There we go. So how have you been, Jen? Been working on any arts and crafts? Keep up with the mic, I'm sorry. So I was talking to Ricky at the office, and he was being super supportive. I think he's helping identify the vibe. He's just like, he told me that, yeah, it reminded him of Bob Ross, which of course that's super flattering because Bob Ross is super awesome. And actually, if you learn about Bob Ross's history, he was pretty much the Mr. Rogers of art, you know, ex-Green Beret who did it for the love of teaching people how to do it, didn't make any money off of his shows, you know, just really cool, interesting dude. But so that in itself is a compliment. But he was saying that he used to go to sleep to Bob Ross, so it's like his therapeutic blankie or nightlight, you know. So that was actually really inspiring. It's like, okay, cool, like cool track, like it could be a chill sort of crafting hangout, place to mellow and unwind at the end of the night, you know. Get people coming in talking about stuff they're working on. Oh, that's cool. What kind of dancing do you do? Oh, shoot. All right, tape is not applying as desired. We'll fix some of those gaps with the glue gun as well. All right, let's see. Yeah, I mean this is a bit of a imprecise and a little bit of a janky way to do this, and that's just partly because of the circumstance we have that to work with this sort of space and confines. Maybe I should just get my wood blocks. I kind of need another baseboard to mount it on. That was really smart. That's what I would do. No, we're just going to keep going. I'm going to use the tape on the outside to secure it and then use glue on the inside. That was my original plan, and I think that's for the best for now, at least for what we're doing. Oh, that's really cool. So contemporary and lyrical dancing. What is this something that you do as a part of a curriculum, or is this something you're just kind of doing in your spare time? Or is this something like you're wanting to do professionally and you're kind of pursuing it that way? Alright, I think we roughly have the outside of the mold walls held together. So glue gun still needs a little more warm-up time. Alright, Red, good luck with swapping your cables out. Hope it all boots back up for you the first time. Easy. Let's see. I could have sworn that I retweeted from that. Whatever. Just waiting for that the glue gun to heat up a bit more, and then we'll seal it up, and then we'll move on to the actual messy stuff, the stuff that is probably going to completely ruin the carpet and get me in trouble. Alright. Glue gun's starting to do its thing, which is good. I don't know if it's something they can possibly do, but if you could make a glue gun that doesn't cause little stringy threads, or a type of adhesive that you could use that at least made it easier to get rid of that, I'd be very happy. How's the view? Let's see. If we went a little higher, let's bring this over this way. It's funny that the detail cam and the overhead cam have somewhat swapped roles tonight, I think. Be getting a little more of an up-close view from the overhead. I've seen a few different types of hot glues that are really neat. One of them was you can get like pink. It's like flesh tone, and it's actually really good for making like creatures or monsters, or if you're doing kind of, you can use it almost like a additive material. Alright, so all I'm gonna do is I'm shooting this glue down into the cracks in between, using it to seal up the spaces. I would use any material that glue dries quickly. So if caulking was what did it, great, we'd use caulking. But hot glue will set up the quickest for us, I think. Just have to be careful because we are using a warm glue gun and oil clay, which certainly responds to heat. So we just have to be very, very, very careful. Since the edges of the book are going to wrap inside of the book, if it's a little messy around the edges, that's actually okay. We can clean up those edges just fine. But it is worth noting that the glue lines will show up in the mold. Now, ideally, you actually do this from the outside, and you just seal it from behind. But kind of given the circumstances, we're going to go with this approach. There we go. So I'm kind of running the nozzle back and forth to push the glue back under it. So, let's see. I should have done the other way like this. I have a good advantage looking at it this way. But yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, when I was doing glue gun kind of stuff, I always kind of saw it as the hobby store kind of solution, you know, that not as a really serious option for major projects. And it wasn't until I was getting to work with Crabcat and those guys that, oops, wow, I'm just melting right through the edge of the clay. Shoot. Oh well. Art's messy. But yeah, that I got to work with them and seeing how versatile that they use those kind of glues. And actually, when you're, you know, if you're at a convention and you need to patch up a suit or something, it's a great patching glue, kind of like a fix-it kind of glue, you know. Also, you could do some really cool tricks with it. I saw it was on Heroes of Cosplay that they did it, where they had pretty much an industrial version of it, you know, really crazy glue guns that heat up fast and kick out a lot of glue, but then they were drizzling it in front of an air compressor to make artificial spider webs. So I thought that was really cool if you actually take advantage of that sort of stringy effect, that it can actually work out for you. Okay. I think that pretty much covers us. I'm just going to kind of make sure that none of those little spiderweb strands are in the way. And actually kind of push the edges of the mold box so that it squishes it around a little. These are already set. See, love that. It's already set and sealed. Did I miss one? I missed one. I missed one edge. There we go. Alright, let me unplug. I consider it a small victory that I did not burn myself using a hot glue gun. Because I don't know about you, but I do that a little too often. Probably a lot more than I should admit to. So yeah, while we're waiting for that to cool down a little bit, probably start setting up to for the next part. This can actually get a little bit intensive, so yeah, if we didn't get that one spot, it could have started leaking. I mean, hopefully the tape would have caught it, but you know, you never know. We're gonna have some spots that leak through, so it's just a given. But also, as the plaster sets up more, it'll you know, it'll kind of be a bit self-limiting. Usually it's the real problem when you're using stuff that's really runny and meant to flow into really tight spots. This one is only at first, so we'll be able to manage that process pretty well. So let's see. I need to grab a brush, a chip brush. I'll take 30 seconds. I'll be right back. Okay, so it's feeling actually feels cooled off. Perfect. So let's see. I'm just gonna. Okay, so that actually feels like it's put together. Where can I set this? So that's the problem, is this isn't my full workspace. It's a very tight corner. All right, so this part's important. It's a little mathy, but this is actually a really easy way to save yourself a lot of money. There we go. Let's see, what's the date? 9/3? Okay. So the mold box that we made, I kind of measured out roughly about how much space that we wanted. I mean, you figure if it's a box, right, that has depth, kind of want to figure how much casting material that we need to cover and fill the volume of this space. So I took some early sort of measurements, and I'm going to do this in metric because metric is much easier for this kind of stuff, and because you literally move the decimal a couple places and you have, you know, milliliters to liters. It's great. But roughly speaking, our mold box was about 37 centimeters by 25 centimeters. Depth-wise, I'd like to cover about 3 centimeters worth. So all this together is 37 times 25 times 3. And that comes out to about 2,775 cubic centimeters. And cubic centimeters are also known as cc's. It's great. Now, the volume, the other nice thing about the volume is that centimeters or cubic centimeters or cc's is also equal to 1 milliliter in volume. So we are going to make about 2.75 liters of fluid to fill this space. Does that make sense? Okay. I checked the density sheets. This is just looking at like actual technical sheets for hydrocal, and it basically says that it has a density of about, it's something like 1.76 grams per cubic centimeter. So if you take this number and multiply it by this number, we should expect to have a final weight of the plaster of 48.84 grams. This is how much that when we're done mixing the water and the plaster, it should total weigh, this is why I love metrics, 4.84 kilograms, right? The mix ratio, so when you're mixing water to plastered powder, you roughly mix 100 parts plaster to 45 parts water by weight, right? So that means that the water plus plaster should equal 4884 grams, right? And this should be 45 parts, and this is 100 parts, you know, or roughly this should be, you know, 45% the weight. So, math, right? So that, I think it kind of, I'll spare you the algebra. 45x plus, you know, 100x equals 4884. 145x equals 4884. You know, and then x equals blah blah blah, and then multiply it back up there. So roughly what that comes down to is that the plaster should weigh this much, and the water should weigh 1516 grams, and those add up and the math checks out. So my apologies for the algebra lesson, but this is important because it tells you how much you should be mixing up, and because you really don't want to overmix or waste, because either way you're going to have to do some math to understand how much you're putting water into the plaster and plaster in the water. So especially when you're working with, sorry, the cat's playing fetch again. When you're working with materials that cure or harden, that require precise volumes to be then set and are sturdier, if you don't take the time and care to be precise with those measurements, you can have a weaker product. And in some cases, like silicone specifically, if you don't measure it well and mix it well, then sometimes the silicone won't even set up. And I've had that happen before, where after all this work, you open up the mold back and it just runs out, and you've literally ruined your piece. It's unrecoverable. It's 100% restart from scratch. So that's pretty terrible. This part I wanted to include because I'm going to try and make a YouTube video around specifically mold making process, and I think that's a good visual. So first things first, I'm not pouring plaster directly onto this. So you know what, I should probably move my nice expensive camera away from all of this. Expensive rubber camera. I went cheap on it. So we're just gonna try and keep it a little cleaner, because you know these surfaces will get messy on their own over time. We'll drop in. You know, actually, before we even do this part, we gotta mix up our plaster. Okay, so let us put this back. And get the messy part. So because this is mixing by weight, we absolutely need a scale. Let's get this light up higher, away. And I'm gonna throw some gloves on, because if working with your hands can be fun and be a little more preferable, better for the environment, making less waste if you're working with your hands. But if there's an emergency and you have 2 club hands of plaster, you'll wish you were wearing gloves. Just found that for the very fact of being able to quickly respond to a bad situation, they almost are always worth it. So the way you mix hydrocal specifically is by, oh geez, this camera's really low. This may be a problem. Oh well, we'll make do. You mix by the, you mix hydrocal into water. And if I remember right, there's actually some cooking recipes that are different, like when you're making cupcakes versus muffins or bread, it's whether you put the liquid into the powder or the powder into the liquid. I forget why exactly it is, but with hydrocal specifically and other plasters, gypsum plasters, that's really important that you start with your water and then add into it. And it also helps the mix disperse better into the water. Because if you start with you pour the water into the plaster, you have to do a lot of hand mixing to really start working it through. And that agitation is actually what starts to activate your gypsum. Now, plaster of Paris is probably the most commonly known plaster that people are used to working with. And hydrocal, with what we're using, is like plaster of Paris. It's actually the same gypsum base, but it also has an additional bit of marble added to it. And that gives it a sturdier quality, and it's a much tougher material. So that's why we're actually going to be using hydrocal. It also, I think it tends to take a little better detail than plaster. Plaster can be a little brittle, and it can be, you know, it doesn't hold up as well, and the detail can be a bit off. The other nice thing is that hydrocal tends to be a little more, I don't know the word, it's a little more desiccating. It tends to pull more moisture into it, or try to. So when we're using a latex skin paint, no, but this is not the time to try and update. Hold on. Sorry about that. Liquid into powder is lighter as density, and powder into water is heavier density. Oh, look at that. Okay, so you actually probably know a lot more about this stuff than I do, to be honest. I learned from YouTube videos. That's good to know. That's good to know how to approach the two. Well, in that case, it makes a lot of sense because the plaster is pretty severe, right? Okay. Where is my water? We are going to need mix this and water. I'll be honest with you, I'm actually a bit nervous about this for the specific fact that I may completely mess this place up. So, maybe this is a good use of this. Let's try it. Nah, you can't see it that well. I was trying to see if we could actually get the weight. Oh, maybe we can. Maybe if I do it this way. What do you think? It's better to have that extra wide shot or to be looking at it like this? So our target weight is 1,516 grams. And here we go. And of course it turns off right as I go to floor. This is the one downside to scales. They always seem to shut off right when you need them. All right, one more time. 1516 is what we're targeting. All right, slow it down. Oh, 1500. 1200. 13. Come on. 14. Did I not bring enough? I did not pour enough. We are at 9. 477. Oh, you can't even read that, can you? Okay, well, good to know that the detail camera has a polarizing lens on it, which works exactly opposite of what you need for a calculator screen like this. Okay. Why are you jumping around? Well, I'm going to say we're close enough. Because let's be honest, it comes to plaster and working with stuff like this, it's not super accurate. We're already within that 45%-ish. It'll work out. Okay, now for the part that's probably going to go terribly wrong. Alright, hold on, I'm going to resituate. Sorry about that. I actually needed to just move my chair out of the equation. I don't think I'm impressing anyone by trying to do this sitting down the entire time. So for the sake of everybody and everything involved, I am going to take it slow, take it easy, and really try not to make a huge, terrible mess. There we go. Got some more altitude on the camera, on my feet. I think this will go well, hopefully. So I just need a little cup to dole it in with. Alright, sorry for the delay. Couldn't find my bag of cups when I needed them. So let's see. By weight, we are going to need 3,368 grams. out. I wonder if the battery's dead. There we go. I was gonna say I used it to measure up to that weight. Shouldn't be a problem. Oh, good. Nice plop of water. Maybe hand is the way to do this. Okay. I think this is better. Except for the fact it's splashing. It's like a no-win. Alright. Really should be wearing my respirator. As I'm watching the curls of hydrocal peel up and around. It's kind of blowing a different way. Maybe I should just point the fan over. Maybe that'd be smarter. Stick was okay, but for work this dangerous, I feel I need the precision control of my hands, lest I risk. I don't even want to say it. I don't want to mention possibly having a giant wallop of plaster. Like my worst nightmare right now is a giant earthquake hitting, tipping the wet plaster that I have here all over the floor, in addition to the rest of the dry plaster, so that all at once everything goes poorly. And it's like the worst of both. Oh, that was not... Okay, we're still okay. The rest of it just kind of gave way, I'm sorry. Alright, we're up to a little under 1,900 grams. So, part of the trick with hydrocal is you want to avoid agitating it for as long as possible. Because as soon as you start working it through, and the more you work it, it actually speeds up the reaction. It'll be warmer, it'll have less of a cure time. So we want to get the weights right and actually let it sit and do its thing before we actually start mixing it together. So right now we're at about a little over 2,600 grams. And then target again, 3368. So we're closing in. We're almost there. All right, we're just crossed 3,000 grams. All right, getting there, 3,100. 3,200. Just about over 300. Okay, 3,300. So we just need 50 more grams. 33. Yep, and it just went over. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a little blob more. I think that is about enough. We got close. I think I just got too heavy for this scale. All right. Okay, we made it this far. We're still in the game. Let's get this out of here. And this will get out of the way. And this actually is just going to sit for a sec. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? We're going to need these stir sticks. I'm going to get a nice wet paper towel, and I'm going to clean down the surface. So I just want to cut down the amount of dusty surfaces and things that I have going in. And this will just help us, you know, from making a mess. Normally, if I had a nice shop or was in the garage, wouldn't care. One bit. Okay. So we're good. This has pretty much kind of worked its way down. So now we're going to stir and start setting up on getting the mold done. Also, once we have... Oh yeah, look at that. I love how silky smooth this stuff is. It's just a beautiful plaster. Sorry, that sounds really weird. But it's when you have the plaster, it's really nicely refined. You know that you're going to get a really good result on your cast. And then we'll slowly work up to as it thickens, and we can add it to the top and build out the depth of it. But at first we want it just nice and smooth, nice and thin, and then that way we can really get some detail. So for the most part, the water is still kind of sitting on top. It's kind of hard to see, but you can feel it on the difference for the density of the stick. I can feel the denser powder underneath. So let's make sure we keep the sides scraped down, the bottom scraped, but we don't want to overwork it. Okay. I'm not really seeing any more lumps show up on the paddle, so I think we're actually good to start. So here we go. Alright, the moment we've all been waiting for. Here, let me just put the plaster on the side of the table that's nearest to my computers. Should be safe over there. Alright, so let's move this. There we go. Okay, this is the moment of truth. I think everything's nicely in shot here. Kind of see what's going on from that side. And we're just going to start by getting this into the mold. That's it. The first coat's always a really light, thin coat. Since the plaster is oil-based, or sorry, the plaster is water-based and that the clay is oil, you're gonna have a little bit of a hard time working together. Something we're gonna have to actually agitate the clay a little bit to kind of work it through. The brush is just kind of help to get it down in there. One thing I didn't do though is I didn't decide to, ooh, why is there a lump of clay there? Or a lump of plaster. I want to make sure it gets down into the low spots, but yeah, so what I didn't do yet I didn't release the mold, and that was actually deliberate, because I wasn't entirely sure how the mold release would interact with the oil clay. I didn't want to risk it ruining the detail. Since we're going to probably be digging this out anyway, the real intent of this is to preserve the detail of the clay, because we're just going to ruin it later. And it's just, we're going to have to rip it out, pick it out, and that's fine. So as long as the mold stays intact, we can always make more. Oh, he joined us. Hey, Sandy. Those eyes are now covered, so it should work a little quicker. So this is really just this part. That's all that's going to happen. Working it down into the details, right? So the areas I'm going to be most concerned about was the face, which I just did, and the stitching. So those are going to be the ones that potentially air bubbles are going to form, right? And once we have sort of the first coat of detail over, I'll actually start pouring some of the plaster down into it. But we'll want to save a little bit of it as well, because we're going to add some backing, some fibers. This is where the cheesecloth comes in, and that's going to help strengthen the mold so that even if it gets into some flex or chips and breaks, it'll still hold up a little better. It's not as necessary with a flat mold like this, but it's one of those extra steps that you're only going to be upset if you didn't do it when it catastrophically goes wrong. So I'd rather be safe than sorry. I mean, really the whole intent of going through this much trouble is to get something that's going to last a bit and let you make tons of copies, right? We want this to persist, be usable. I would be disappointed if we didn't get at least 30 copies out of a well-made mold. That's a hydrocal-based mold like this. All molds aren't forever, though. I mean, it is unreasonable to assume that you'll, once you make a mold, it'll hold up indefinitely. Even really high-quality, sturdy, platinum pure silicone molds will lose their fidelity over time, lose detail, lose strength, start tearing. It's to be expected. So in that case, it's good if you can keep a high quality initial mold right after you make the mother mold, is then pull a cast or have a pull of that early on that still has a bunch of the detail, and then save that, and you can always remold that. So usually the first mold that you pull out of something tends to be junky, but if you save like the second or third, that may be actually good enough to retain a good master copy. Make it out of a good sturdy high detail material that'll hold up. And you can always go back to that if you need to. So it's starting to thicken, you can kind of tell. It's not as runny. It was a little more of like a milk consistency when it first started, at least the initial stuff. And now it's a little more, it's a little bit like a thin pancake batter, It's sticking a little better to the different spots. Another thing to keep in mind when you're doing plaster stuff, and it's something that unfortunately that I remember when I was a kid, my mom figured out the hard way, was she was doing a mold of her chest, because my mom's all artsy, and she was using plaster, and either wasn't aware or wasn't really concerned with plaster heating up when it cures. And the thicker it is, the warmer it gets. So if you're working with like small amounts, it's really not that big of a deal. If you have enough to cover a torso, it can actually heat up enough to cause 3rd-degree burns. Or wait, 1st degree. Which degrees are worse? Higher the degrees are worse. Yeah, okay, 2nd-degree burns. It was more than just 1st-degree sunburn kind of stuff. It actually caused some trouble. But so, TLDR, artsy mom burned her boobies. Alright, I think we kind of have a good first layer down. Might be able to start adding more to this. So actually, while we have it like this, one thing I want to do is kind of like thump it a bit. And this is just to kind of help it work down into the little spots and work out any of those bubbles. Okay. So there's still some spots kind of showing through. So we're just gonna go anywhere little bubbles are popping up. Kind of work the brush down into those spots. Add it to wherever oil is kind of parting through. So one thing that's always crazy with when you're working with plaster, it never seems like it's going to work. It always seems like too little water at first, and then once you mix it up, it seems too thin. It's like an emotional roller coaster. You really have to kind of have the experience to calm you through this process. Okay, just keep building up that detail. Snake texture. You want to make sure it's really worked down into those pieces. The other thing to consider too is you have to be really careful when you're doing this as well, because just as much as the dry brush could affect the clay before, it certainly still can now. So if you're pushing in really hard and brushing it, you're going to be adding texture underneath, and we don't want that. I mean, ideally, if you could, you get like a ridiculously soft nylon brush and do it, but you know, any brush you use for this is basically a goner. Okay. So I think we're generally okay with the base coat and working it into the details. We'll give it some more thumps. And now, oh yeah, see now it's really starting to thicken up, I can tell. Let's just stir it a bit more. So, remember, we are going to want to save a good bit of this plaster. It's not all going to go in on this pork, because we need some to soak the cloth in, and we also need some to finish over the cloth after. The other thing too is that when you're pouring, especially like mold materials and stuff like that, you'll want to pour to a low spot in a corner and let it fill over the piece. It kind of works, is the best way that it works out bubbles and kind of gets all that problem out of its system, you know? Bye-bye hard work. I really hope to see you on the other side. Okay. That's probably more than enough for this. For at least this part. Let's let that settle. Let me grab the bandages and I can show you what the next part's going to be. And I can already feel it starting to heat up. So that's the other part. As this heats up, what's going to happen to oil clay that melts under heat? So this is going to warm up and the clay underneath is going to soften. So if we're not careful, we can very easily cook our piece while we're pushing it, mashing it, and smashing it, and it's just going to squish it. And that's no good. It may do that anyway. The weight of everything may set up and be a problem. There's still, failure is always an option when you're doing molding like this. So I have just a bunch of cheesecloth, and really all this is there is just to add some more fiber. You can actually use not fiberglass woven cloth, but like fiberglass mesh. I don't know if you've ever worked with fiberglass before, but you can use it's sort of like a loose mat. Looks like a stack of hay almost, but flattened out. That stuff will actually hold up really well. It's a little more expensive, but it's a good high quality and really sturdy material that you can back your stuff with. So this is still pretty runny. We're not ready, I think, for this part yet, but I wanted to show you while we're sitting and waiting. This stuff has about a half, so it should be starting to kick pretty soon. I don't know if you can already see that. See, that's kind of how it coats. But yeah. Okay, well, we're waiting this to set up for a little bit. So Jenna, you were saying that you were wanting to go to school for interpretive dance, right? What made you want to go that route? That's really cool. It's certainly being coordinated like that is impressive. This one's just gonna have to wait. Or maybe we can just throw it in there and call it good. Hope nothing bad happens on the computer right now, because if it does, I will no longer be able to tend to it. Okay. So let's just keep it these little blocks. Little squares. That's really cool. I mean, you're right. I mean, you figure it's always a joke, right? Most people can't dance. It's because I don't know. I would guess it's something you always were probably pretty good at, right, as a kid? We are just going to lay them in like this. Oh yeah, this is thickening up. It's time to move. It's funny how drastically different the moments get when you're working with this stuff. All of a sudden it's like, okay, you are now needing to work quickly. Really? So, something that you really worked hard at then? Or is it something that you found like later on that you actually had an affinity towards, or maybe something that you were always kind of improving on and just weren't really cognitive? I don't know, like how did you go from, womb to dancer, I guess? Do this quickly. Sorry, this has now become a very different situation. To work a lot quicker. I should have been doing that while we were talking, honestly. I always over and underestimate plaster. The real question is going to be is how much plaster gets all over everything by the time we're done. Where are we going to find it? What strange and interesting places will it exist? I always have a wonderful habit of doing it in clothes that I don't want to ruin. Because that's smart, right? Wear your nice clothes when you craft so people know you're serious about it. I'm just moving through this. So once we get the cheesecloth down, then I'll start layering this in over the top of it because it's pretty solid, or getting solid. Come on, cheesecloth, you're not being helpful. Maybe we just do this. Let's stop soaking the cheesecloth. Let's just put it down. We'll just hope it works out. Alright. There we go. Now let's get this down. There's no clean way to do this. And it's on my foot. Ladies and gentlemen, we are rushing and we are going to cause a mess. So I am just going to quickly get this out of the bucket and into the mold. And then I will work it around and go from there. Alright. Need to be very careful how I'm proceeding here. Otherwise I really am going to make a mess that I'm going to regret. That's not what's ready. So a bit of loose water on the top. I can feel the the mold underneath. It's kind of creepy. Alright. So remember what I was saying about gloves? Of course I touched the bucket. Let me go rinse my hands off real quick. Alright, so now this whole next part is dedicated to smoothing the surface. Because if we want to set this down and let it, let it cook, or when we go to mold and we want to set it on something and then let it mold flat, if it's got all those bumps and stuff in the back, it's going to be really difficult to have it lay flat. It'll be all wobbly. So we're going to just kind of focus on, as it hardens up, to smoothing it and cutting down on work later. The other option is let it harden, all gross and nasty, and then sand it. And that's messy and difficult. Oh wow, that's crazy. 5 years to get in to a fine arts school. Well, how did you end up in it then? I mean, if your friend took that long to get in, I mean, did you apply then, or is it something you came to later? Oh wow. I don't know if you can tell the difference between the plaster at this point, but it's now about the consistency of like wall paste or toothpaste. Alright. Oh, music stopped. Hands roughly clean, right? Hopefully that song's not terrible. I don't have my headphones on. Alright. So yeah, this is definitely getting... Unfortunately, it didn't pour even. I can already tell where there's like a bit of height difference to it. But it is getting smoother, which is good. The more we work it, the smoother it gets. And we should get a really nice finished product. Ideally, when it's all done, it'll be all smooth and pretty, and you wouldn't even see any brush strokes in it. I don't really have the right tools, I think, or materials to do that, though. It's interesting how people treat exclusivity for interests like that, you know? You obviously have an interest, probably a really good aptitude for it, and for whatever arbitrary reason, they won't let you in. Well, I guarantee you it's their fault. So this part is when it's really starting to get critical. So it's absolutely kicking. Sorry, my attention and focus is very much on this at the moment. Don't mean to be rude. My apologies. Okay. Now we're really kicking over. Now, we literally switch to hand polishing. It's just smooth enough to where we can get the sort of the pieces out of it. This is good. Like anything you can do, this will help cut down on the burrs and stuff that'll be painful later. If you think of like the texture of plaster, you could potentially leave like, you know, what will look like little tips of frosting, you know? And when those become rock hard, that's like a little rose thorn made out of stone. It was very unpleasant. So, taking the time to just smooth out all these little details on the back, just again, it gives you just a much better mold. It looks better, holds up better, easier to handle, feels nicer to work with. It'll last longer too. So as this picks up, I'm actually able to apply like a little more and a little more pressure. And I'm gonna run to the other room real quick and pick up something to actually polish this with. Just got a little bit of that cheesecloth. I think I've used all of it. Let's see if this will work. So I'm just switching to a cloth, or paper towel specifically. And it's just something with a little more rough abrasive. It is just like sanding. You want to push too hard where you're pulling it up, but it'll start actually getting like glossy, which is good. I mean, I guess ideally if you were able to polish it down to like a mirror finish, that would be ideal, but I don't think that's functionally necessary, right? Alright, I think I can safely ditch the gloves at this point. Beautiful. It's picking it up a little bit, so I gotta be a little more gentle while I'm doing this. But I think we have a pretty good back to it. Hopefully the other side of it looks this good. That's cool. It's cool that you're able to still compete and participate and stay in it. I mean, if anything, strong character comes from those obstacles, right? You can't have courage without fear. And you can't have character without hardship. Okay, so it's still clammy, right? So it's starting to get rid of the water and it's starting to heat up. It may not be thick enough to really get too warm, but once it really kicks and goes exothermic, that's when we know that it's really setting up for what it's trying to do. Sigh of relief. So, we're just going to use this kind of time to clean up a little bit. Pretty happy. I think our measurements came out pretty good. So you can see that soupy mess, which was really watery, like the consistency of milk. You can now see that is about, it's brittle. It's hard. And I think, if I remember right, that this actually cures, I think I said it was like half an hour. It should be hard enough to demold, so we may actually be able to demold it. But it's not fully cured until, I think about 72 hours, I want to say. So, something that potentially will be ready to start working on for Friday. You can clean out the mold and start picking through the wax, or picking through the clay. I think should be good. Should make for a good Friday. So once this is one of the more trying tests of patience, is waiting for a mold to cure. I always feel like that's the hardest thing. It's just like, no, don't touch it, leave it alone. It's like right now I just want to rip into it. And it'll probably break and shatter and ruin it. It's because of patience. I know what I can do. I can clean up the sides. Ooh, actually, that may be smart. Okay, we may actually be able to start unmolding it a little bit. No, it's still not. It's not ready. I need it to cool down. I can still feel heat on it. Sorry, I'm very impatient. So aside from dance, which I'm sure is a very significant part of what you do you any other artistic tendencies, or either of you? What about you, Sandy? Any art stuff on the side? Clean. I want to start hacking at this with a cleanup tool. Clean up the edges, you know? It's almost there. It's almost there. I feel like I'm just asking for it. Forgotten, I still have a tub of dry plaster back there. Should probably not set that in front of the fan. I start dusting the rest of the place. Oh, cool. Do you watch a lot of YouTube stuff for makeup? Pick up any of their stuff? Anybody in particular that you follow if you do? Up, getting all my stuff staged over. Yeah. Who was it that I watched some stuff of? I don't know if you know Pink Stylist. He does really cool sort of theatric kind of makeups. Like he'll do popular internet memes, you know, like Smile Dog and Smiley and Slenderman and blue face, like the static face, stuff like that. I don't know if you've seen any of his stuff, but he'll go on a Omegle and just like, you know, scare people, basically. pretty funny. He's really good. And I can't imagine self-applying makeup. You know what I'd really love to do, and I actually picked up some extra alginate while I was up picking this stuff up. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, this stuff's getting warm. So we have to wait for it to cool down again before we futz with it. I picked up some alginate from the art supply store, and I want to do a face mold. I did one for my brother. He'd got a bunch of molding supplies to do it with, but I'd like to do one. I'd love to have my own face sculpt and then be able to do my own appliances and prosthetics, but I'll probably have to do it for somebody else. I mean, really, to be honest, I don't trust other people to encase my head in liquid rock. Oh, yeah, I can imagine if you have the fundamentals down, right? Like what's going to be crazy different with makeup. I feel like whenever I've watched a makeup tutorial, just out of curiosity, it's like put really big splots of light colored and dark colored on your face and then blend it all in. I know that I used to know a few people that had gone to beauty school specifically to learn actual just beauty makeup, but then ended up picking up effects makeup as well. That was really cool. I'd go for the other way around. I want to go for the VFX type makeup, and I guess I would just learn how to be really good at beauty makeup. Oh, that's cool. That'd be kind of funny if at the end of the day, go to school for VFX makeup and then end up being better at glamour makeup, and then go make a career off of doing that. And yeah, it's still pretty warm. So this is the part where I'm glad it's hardened up, because if it was still soft underneath, I'm telling you right now, the clay is just gonna run out from it. As far as I can tell, we look pretty airtight on our seals. I think we actually sealed it up, and we didn't lose any plaster on that, which is really good. I'm glad we got that spot back in this corner. I almost missed that. Oh yeah, that's what I love about Tiff, is she's so creative. Starting off doing YouTube stuff like she has with gaming, and then rolling that into her more creative side. And then of course, Mario too, being a graphic designer. I love the work that he puts together as well. They're both really, really inspiring to see them enjoy and embrace their creativity so much in that way. It was really nice of him to bring you guys over too. You guys they have really cool fans that are very supportive and very into creative stuff, and that's really neat. And I haven't really been exposed to that on this space yet, so I feel really lucky. It seems like the stereotype for the internet in general is creating something in the space, immediately opening yourself up to criticism, and that you're likely going to take crap for what you do. So it's neat to see that it's actually helped enable communities of people to find each other, that you don't have to have a large single website, so to speak, to go through. You can just kind of find a pocket of people that appreciate what you do, and that you can share that sort of camaraderie with. It's really neat. Yeah, it can be really neat having two creative people. You know, if you're in a relationship with creatives, that can be super awesome and also super terrible, depending on how much overlap there is. It's nice sometimes when that creative has enough of its own space to work in, you know? If you kind of have your own, you can be creative together and creative thinking, but also have an area that's sort of more your own thing, and you're not stepping on each other's toes. I certainly got, like, my mom and my dad were very similar and different in a lot of ways. My mom is a very kind of traditional sort of creative, you know, really head in the clouds kind of, big ideas, likes to paint on canvas with oil, has done sculpture, like fine art kind of stuff. Like I said, you know, when she burned her boobs, she was doing a cast of her chest, which was kind of like, you know, that sort of like sexy torso plaster look was kind of big in the early 90s, you know, doing stuff like that. And she was doing some of those. And so she's always been a little more of the, you know, I would say classic creative. And my dad, on the other hand, is creative differently. He should have been an engineer. He really should have, because he can build just about anything, you know? If you make it with your hands to have a function, that's kind of what my dad's really good at. So, you know, he'll make the rock pond in the back patio with a waterfall, and oh yeah, burnt mom boobs. Real quick recap. I was telling about how plaster gets hot and how my mom had decided to make a plaster cast of her chest and ended up basically with second-degree burns because of it. But anyway, moving on. My dad's like, you know, he'll take old wood pallets and then cut them into little like dining tables for my sisters, and you know, so he was really like functional creative. He was what's the word? Ingenious, I guess. You know, had a lot of ingenuity. Creative, industrial kind of, you know, industrious kind of guy. So it's weird that I kind of fell into this, where I like industrious creative, right? Like, yes, sculpting is kind of nice, but then manufacturing it into a mold, manufacturing art past that. So it's kind of a mix between the two. And I have some other cosplay crafter friends who seem to have similar stories, you know. Mom or dad, one was a lot more traditionally creative, and then the other was a lot more sort of an engineer. And the two of them together ended up with cosplayer kind of kids. So maybe there's a correlation there. Maybe it's just, and then, you know, I'm noticing the data. Yeah, there's it's in some ways it's kind of like a bit of a stereotypical dad thing, right? Build stuff with lumber and nails and hammers, and you know, you construct. Drop a dad off in the middle of a forest and he'll clear it and then use the logs to make a cabin. Funny thing is, my dad though took the approach not from a fully educated perspective though too, and so he taught himself a lot along the way, including being a bit of an electrician. So while we were gone on our family trip back to see relatives in Wisconsin, my dad was fixing up the house and doing some rewiring and just kind of figuring it out on the fly. Well, I still think he has the screwdrivers with the black and charred chunks blasted out of them. He almost electrocuted himself several times. But that's my dad, you know, you just kind of figure it out as you go, and it definitely kind of picked that up too. Although I think I do a little more upfront research. I like to really like dig in, you know. As soon as I get interested in something, I start researching it like I'm writing a thesis on it. Oh, it's funny you'd say that, because my dad's the same way. He seems like he's constantly at odds with my stepmom about wanting to just move out, you know, to a piece of land in Seattle or in Washington or Oregon, just and be a grizzled old hermit. I don't know about you, but I'm a little too attached to the internet to give it all up. Let's see. How's this plaster doing? Kind of getting a feel of how sturdy the plaster is. What's really interesting is really how difficult it gets to actually break this stuff, and it's not that thick. It's pretty sturdy stuff. I mean, we gave up cable recently, you know, we just had Netflix. We live on internet. We just got 4G LTE on my phone. I have basically broadband internet wherever I go. Time Warner actually just upgraded our connection for free. I got a 200 megabit down. I'm not gonna go trade that for a cabin. Oh, hey Brandon. So just to catch you up, we've recently just painted all the plaster into the mold. You missed the most dangerous, harrowing part. And now the mold is curing. It's just hardening. Unfortunately, obviously you can't feel it, but right now that the plaster's set, it's hard. And you can see these are pieces from the bucket, just drips that are, it's now brittle. Kind of like a chip, tortilla chip kind of brittleness. But the plaster's heating up. And once this cools down, then when it starts cooling back down to room temperature, then it'll be safe to actually demold it. Until then, I kind of have to leave it alone. So I don't know exactly how long that's going to take, so I keep checking it, so I'm kind of fussing with it. But it's certainly gotten warmer. Once it starts sliding down and getting cooler, then it's something we can mess with. And yeah, you missed the story, which I'll fill in for a third time, is how I learned that plaster heats up. When I was a kid, my mom decided she wanted to make a plaster mold of her chest, you know, her torso and boobs, and didn't know that, or at least didn't know plaster could get as hot as it did, and ended up getting stuck in it while it burned her pretty good, and she got second-degree burns, burnt boobies. This is a story I got, you know, secondhand. I wasn't actively participating in the art. We're not that artsy of a family. So. All right. So I'm guessing that this is probably going to be about another hour before it cools off enough to work with. So unfortunately, I think this is actually going to be a good place to wrap up, and we will do the unmolding on Friday. So we'll start flipping it over, and we'll start pulling the clay out, and people can actually see what actually we did with the mold. And then if it cleans up well and we get it cleaned out and it doesn't take too long, we can actually start painting in the latex and start prepping it for the actual book cover itself. So yeah, Brandon, so pretty much what's going to happen is that the original clay that we did, it's done. That's it. I just encased it in a bunch of hot stone. The heat itself probably going to